Right, hello everyone, and welcome back to Author Story, the home of authors and stories that matter. I am your host, Alexander Lim, and this episode's featured guest is Michael Mathieu, who is on a mission to improve people's health. He is a health coach and founder of Michael Mathieu Foundational Health, who offers a unique combination of customized health coaching and structural bodywork. So, Michael, welcome to Author Story. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Alex. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great, great. So first, Michael, I'd like to get a little bit into your background. I mean, you are focused in health, so I'm kind of assuming that things happen in your life that got you interested into this. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, absolutely. I I think it was when I was in high school.
Hmm.
My oldest sister got interested in health, and her name is Julie, and um, started kind of educating the family about, too much sugar, is it a good
Mm-hmm.
thing, and some
Mm-hmm.
things like that, and that just got my attention.
Mm-hmm.
But what really threw me into it was shortly after college, um, and when I started working full time,
All right.
I my low back went out on me,
Mm.
and at 23 years old, that just threw me into a dizzy and
All right.
tizzy, maybe a better word. So, and then I also I found out in that I used to live in Rochester, New York, working for Eastman Kodak, and they had a food co-op, and I just found myself really curious.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason in my head, I had this idea that going towards a vegetarian diet was it just was the optimal thing to do for
Mm-hmm.
that's what a lot of people were preaching then.
All right.
And so it just seemed like a good thing to do and not kill as many animals.
Right.
Anyway, so I got really enamored with that, and now, it was during that 5 years I worked at Kodak, my health totally fell apart.
Uh-huh.
And I had a bunch of reasons over the years, but it's been things I've learned in the past year that
Mm-hmm.
have really kind of showed me of some of the decisions I made really were the problem. Some of the
Right.
foods I started eating and really focusing on.
Right. Right. Okay. So you're essentially focused on a foundational health. Can you tell us a little bit what is foundational health all about?
Yeah, it's the idea that if we put some of the real basic building blocks in place,
Mm-hmm.
if we eat foods that are really high density nutrition and easy to digest and have all the nutrients we need,
Mm-hmm.
and we focus on those, that um, that our body knows what to do with them.
Mm-hmm.
It's design, and that's I call that foundational because we don't have to think so hard
Mm-hmm.
if we give the body the right foods it needs,
Uh-huh.
and it can figure out a lot of this stuff.
Right.
And then obviously, if someone's got chronic health issues and they've had them for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
we may need to look deeper,
Mm-hmm.
but still we need to keep those foundational pieces
Mm-hmm.
in place.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that means focusing on the diet first.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also like to bring in, if people do have issues when they're getting started,
Mm-hmm.
they're not just, people in a preventative mode, we probably
Mm-hmm.
can just focus on diet. But if
Mm-hmm.
someone who's got some issues, then, I like to bring in certain supplements initially that
Mm-hmm.
I just feel are critical,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not worth um, it's not worth thinking we'll just get those in by chance.
Mm-hmm.
So that way there's real basic foods and there's
Mm-hmm.
real basic, support.
Mm-hmm.
And then with a lot of people, especially if they have like mild to moderate symptoms, in a lot of cases, that's going to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to really get people on a really strong, good path to achieving their health goals.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right.
And re and really letting the body work its magic.
Mm-hmm. All right, cool. So you have an idea of how things work. So can you give us a little bit of the what so when it comes to the diet today? I mean, what is it all about? What's lacking with it, and that sort of thing.
Do you mean in general
Yeah, in
with kind
general.
of
Yeah,
what
what's
culture?
yeah.
Yeah. One of the big problems, especially in the United States where I live, there's so much focus on, um, there's a lot of trending going towards vegetarianism and veganism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And for some people, it works, and God bless you if it does.
Uh-huh.
But for a lot of people, they're finding their health is falling apart.
Uh-huh.
And there can be multiple reasons for why.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the story becomes a little bit complex from
Okay.
everything that I'm studying and learning and seeing in clinical practice. But there was a man named Weston Price, which if people are into nutrition, they might know his name, but he was a dentist back in the 30s and 40s.
Mm-hmm.
And he traveled all over the world because he was really fascinated by why he was seeing some degradation in the health of his clients and their children.
Uh-huh.
And one of the important things that he found in his work is that no matter where people lived and what their diet was, the people who were the healthiest,
Mm-hmm.
they had really high amounts of the three fat soluble vitamins
Mm-hmm.
in their diet. And those are vitamin A,
Mm-hmm.
vitamin D, and
Mm-hmm.
vitamin K2.
Mm-hmm.
And those, they have so many functions in the body, but one of their primary ones is to tell the minerals where to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're really crucial in making really healthy, strong, and dense bones that are flexible also.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the hallmarks from Dr. Price's work. And it's one of the things that researchers have found, because of the dietary choices people are making,
Mm-hmm.
those vitamins are becoming less and less and less. And
Mm-hmm.
then, of course, and I'm not minimizing any of the other nutrients that we need, but those three are crucial,
Mm-hmm.
as well as, um, making sure we have adequate levels of um, of protein, the basic building blocks. We do need some, fat, and we need some protein
Right.
in decent amounts. And this whole idea is, and one of the reasons we're lacking in those fat soluble vitamins is there's this idea that really started in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
because of, which is a whole another story in itself,
Mm-hmm.
but this idea that animal fat
Mm-hmm.
is bad and leads to cardiovascular problems.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who are really digging into that recently
Right.
um, are finding that the research was bad, the
Uh-huh.
analysis of it was bad,
Right.
there was a lot of big egos involved,
Mm-hmm.
and in most cases, what they were putting forth was absolutely wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And those animal saturated fats are actually crucial to our health. They build the basic cell membranes, and eating high fat, animal fat diets does not lead to cardiovascular problems.
Mm. Okay.
So we've been lied to basically.
Mm.
And now the work for a lot of us out here in this field is re-education
Mm-hmm.
because of the bad education that we've been given for the last 60 years.
Right.
So those are a couple of the big pieces. And people
Mm-hmm.
are, unfortunately, the research isn't that well. If you look into like keto diet, there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of good research out there. But as far as there's some people going as far as going into a full-on carnivore diet, which means just eating animal foods.
Mm-hmm.
And the research isn't there
Mm-hmm.
because people haven't looked into that. So
Right.
the best we can do is look at, some of the groups of indigenous people around the world who historically have eaten that way,
Mm-hmm.
and we can look at what their health, is or was when they were more doing, like people in the Inuit people in northern, North America.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as far as we know, they were eating almost purely animal diets for thousands of years.
Right.
And people who went and, there's a researcher named Stephenson who spent 12 years up in the Arctic in the early 1900s. And what he found was people with incredibly robust health.
Mm-hmm.
And so this idea that we have to rely on plant foods for
Mm-hmm.
missing nutrients that aren't in animal products is best we can tell at this point.
Mm-hmm.
That's not accurate
Mm-hmm.
at all.
All right.
And because they had so little plant food up there.
Right.
But now what you can see are hundreds and hundreds of, if not thousands of testimonials of people, going towards more animal-based diet
Mm-hmm.
and having huge changes in their health.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm seeing it in my clinical practice as well.
Right. Okay. So you did mention you have a clinical practice, and after all, you're essentially a health coach. What I believe you're not a doctor, right? So, I mean, it's
Yeah,
got to be
correct.
asked. I mean, people are gonna ask. So, why would people, believe you as a health coach? I mean, what's the sort of thing that you have that, that would make something work?
Yeah, one is digging into the research,
Mm-hmm.
and my background is in electrical engineering,
Okay.
and one of the trends that I'm seeing in the people that I'm studying with is we're seeing more and more citizen scientists
Mm-hmm.
because engineers come into this work
Mm-hmm.
without a bias.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at results and the data,
Mm-hmm.
and um, and some of the citizen scientists are really kind of driving the way with this kind of work, because so many people who come in with really traditional medical background,
Mm-hmm.
they come in with a lot of bias.
Mm-hmm.
And either they get taught almost no nutrition
Mm-hmm.
in their medical training,
Right.
and then they're so overwhelmed with the size of their practice and all the pieces of it that they're not actually able to dive into some of the research that's really out there.
Mm-hmm.
So they pretty much believe what they were taught in medical school.
Mm-hmm.
And doctors who are out there now, as one example, they believe that fat is bad,
Mm-hmm.
Animal fat.
Right.
And that data is not holding up under scrutiny right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one thing. I come in with fresh eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I have my own, unfortunately, I have my own health issues that I've been dealing with for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm finally, because of some of the work that other people are putting out there, who aren't necessarily medical at all,
All right.
I am, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. They're really, like I said, they're really paving the way,
Mm-hmm.
and we're looking at things with fresh eyes, and we're really looking critically at the data that's been put out there previously. So you get that with me.
Mm-hmm.
I've thought ever since my 20s being an engineer that I really feel like there's some critical thinking that's missing in the medical field.
Uh-huh.
And that's
Uh-huh.
one of the strengths I bring as an engineer,
Mm-hmm.
is we get taught how to look at things really critically.
Right.
And that kind of, it's a really different type of thinking. And sometimes it can be a bit linear, but, there's real ways in which, how the body works
Mm-hmm.
and how we need to work with the body.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not, engineers, again, aren't trained to think emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
We're taught to train. It's not like we don't have feelings, but we're taught how to really look at the data and work with it. And in cases where we don't have the research, we also get taught how to make the best decisions we can with the information we have available.
Mm-hmm.
And then work with that, and once we get started with a client, it's also, let's keep adapting and customizing for the individual.
Right.
Yeah, and one of the things, one of the pieces that's come out with some of this movement towards keto, but especially towards, people who are playing with the carnivore diet,
Mm-hmm.
it's making it really clear
Mm-hmm.
there are substances in these plant foods
Mm-hmm.
that are really harmful to humans.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have the capacity, to deal with some of these toxins in plants.
Mm-hmm.
There's this kind of belief that, oh, plants are here for us to feed us optimally,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just awesome, food for us. And yet some of the data really shows, that some of these plant toxins and anti-nutrients are really damaging to the human body. And a perfect example is one of the, plants are not able to run away from predators.
Right.
So they had millions of years to evolve and create a whole host of chemicals, many of which are designed to protect themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the best examples of that is a molecule called oxalic acid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And oxalic acid gets produced in the plants. Part of it is it's produced so that the plant can store its own calcium reserves.
Mm-hmm.
And because that mineral is needed for so many things inside the plant. But it's also created as a defense mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
And we could talk. There's hours and hours of talking that can be done about oxalic acid, but to boil it down into for a short interview like this,
Mm-hmm.
I just need to say that when oxalic acid enters the human body,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it already comes in as a crystal, but if it comes in just as the oxalic acid molecule,
Mm-hmm.
it has an affinity for, it can drop a proton or two, and now it's looking for a positive charge.
Mm-hmm.
And the positive charges in the body are minerals like calcium, magnesium, zinc,
Mm-hmm.
iron,
Mm-hmm.
and it loves to combine with these compounds,
Mm-hmm.
and especially the bonds with calcium and magnesium.
Mm-hmm.
They are so strong they can't be broken inside the body.
Mm-hmm.
And now you've made those minerals unavailable, completely unavailable to the body.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, it'll rob those minerals from inside the body.
Mm-hmm.
And then the body can only, the body has no mechanism that is able to break those oxalic crystals down.
Mm-hmm.
So it has to just pass them out either through the urine or the feces or the sweat.
Right.
And it can only do so much a day.
Mm-hmm.
So anything that you eat that's higher than that amount is going to be toxic to the body.
Uh-huh.
And because it's got to store it now.
Mm-hmm.
And what it's storing are crystals of all different sizes, from nano size that can go right through the cell membrane into the cell,
Mm-hmm.
and all the way up to visual,
Mm-hmm.
what's macro size that you can see with the human eye,
Mm-hmm.
and then everything in between. And some of these things are like sharp needles or spears,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and some are just like, have pointy structures all around their outsides. And basically what you can think of is you're eating or ingesting all different sizes of sharp glass,
Mm-hmm.
crushed glass particles.
Mm-hmm.
And it can do serious damage to the gut because the gut wall is only a cell thick,
Right.
one cell thickness. Or it can get these nanocrystals can get inside the cells,
Mm-hmm.
and they're so sharp mechanically,
Mm-hmm.
they can cause all kind of havoc inside the cell and do damage to the mitochondria
Mm-hmm.
and all the organelles inside the cell.
Mm-hmm.
And if you eat enough of these and enough get inside the cell, it can actually kill the cell.
Mm-hmm.
So this is serious business we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
And it and a lot of people think that, oh, oxalates create kidney stones. So if I don't have kidney stones, I don't have a problem with oxalates.
Mm-hmm.
But there are plenty of people. Again, the story can get big so fast. So I need to be careful to just keep this streamlined here. But we've got thousands of people working on reducing their oxalates in their diet and are having huge improvements in their health. So we're finding people who don't have kidney stones, they're also getting deposits of oxalates in their tissues throughout their body. And it's just individual who gets kidney stones and who don't. And unfortunately, the medical field only pays attention to oxalates if somebody is having issues with stones.
Right.
So what the people who are really, there's people like Susan Owens of the Trying Low Oxalate Facebook page, and Sally K. Norton, who's an independent researcher and seeing clients getting this information out there and just saving a lot of people's lives. And the problem is, especially over the last 10 years or so, people who are getting obsessed with making these, green drinks or spinach smoothies, where they put in spinach and almond butter and almond milk and chia seeds and other foods that are high in oxalates. There's some of those people are just absolutely destroying their health. So part of my job, I use this as an example for just saying that part of my job when I work with people is a lot of it's about education. There are people who have to really reduce their level of oxalate intake, and then there's other people that don't seem to as much. But in my world, it just makes sense. Be aware of what those foods are, because they can bioaccumulate over years and years, and you may have no problems, and all of a sudden your health breaks down, and you don't know why. And there ain't many people talking about oxalates right now. So my job is to educate people enough so they make really smart decisions.
Okay. All right. So can you just give an example of the kind of approach you would use? Like, say someone comes to you, they've got this problem, chronic illness. So what's the essential process of how you'd go about it?
Sure. That's a great question. So I'll give you an example of a real client.
Okay.
Her story is actually on my YouTube channel. It's my second interview, and I called it Sarah's Recovery from Autoimmune Disease. So Sarah's 20 years old, 21 now. She came to see me as one of my healthcare providers, and we got to know each other, and she's listening to some of the stuff I'm listening to, and because I'm always educating myself, and then she started asking some questions, I started asking some questions, and then we just decided, what what I learned from her is her health hasn't been great her entire life, really low energy, serious constipation, and then she finds out a year ago that she has celiac disease, and people know that often as, oh, you can't eat gluten. The people who are talking about it now, it's an autoimmune disease. And so we know that, and usually a lot of these autoimmune diseases are caused by leaky gut. And so it's like, okay, we know she's got a gut problem. And then she finds out while she's working with me, she just started in December, that she also has osteopenia, which osteoporosis is major bone loss in our bones. And osteopenia is heading in the direction of osteoporosis. So we've lost bone mass, but it isn't full-on osteoporosis yet. This is a terrible thing for a woman who's 20 years old. This should not be happening. Something's wrong. So this is a really big signal. And then a couple months later, she starts having pain and nausea when she eats, and then sometimes vomiting. And we find out that she gets an ultrasound of her gut, and she finds out her spleen is huge.
Okay.
Big enough so that they're thinking she might need to have her spleen removed.
Right.
Which, again, she came in that day when she came to see me and she was totally depressed. And it's like, why would, of course, at 20 years old, you shouldn't be dealing with this. So anyway, I approached things really carefully with her, but basically, we did a diet. She kept a diary for me, so I could really get a sense of what she was eating.
Right.
We did full intake, with lots of questions and history and medical tests. And, and me not being a doctor, I have to be really mindful. I'm making suggestions. I'm not diagnosing and I'm not treating.
Right.
What I offered her was that she consider moving her diet to, which her diet was not. It was definitely in the, sad American diet realm. So we just moved towards more nutrient dense foods and got her eating more animal based diet than she had been. So more meat. And I asked her to really consider focusing on increasing the amount of fat.
Right.
Because a lot of meats are lean, but people who are working in this, when we're working in lowering the carbohydrates, we have to shift the body into more fat burning, and we have to give it sufficient fat.
Right.
Too much lean meat is a problem by itself. And there's a whole thing called rabbit starvation when you eat, when explorers and, people in the wilderness, if they eat rabbits and other foods that are totally lean without enough fat, they actually start having serious problems. So anyway, so meat and fat in sufficient quantities, and then fill in her case, looking at her diet, she was choosing foods that were higher in oxalate. And that's just one plant toxin. There's many others.
Right.
I just used that as to talk about here. So we reduced plant foods and carbs. She still was eating some plants, and we got rid of the high oxalate foods. And then the other thing, we took a look at her vitamin D level, and it was low. And I'm a big fan of getting, it can be hard to get your vitamin D level up high enough, just with food sometimes.
Right.
So at least initially, I'm a big fan of using supplements to boost that. And along with that comes the vitamin K2, which, unless you're eating only grass-fed animals, the fat in that animal is going to be low in K2. So again, initially, especially since she has osteopenia, we really want to get on this. So boost that level. And then the triad is also bringing in vitamin A. So for people who like it or can tolerate it, I'm a big fan of encouraging people to eat organ meats. And that means liver, and especially high in vitamin A. And also kidney. That can be a bigger stretch for people. Heart is great. It's not so high in vitamin A, but it has other important nutrients in it. So I'm a big fan of asking people to consider bringing those foods in because they're so nutrient dense. I spent a bunch of time looking for a vitamin A supplement I could be happy with. And some are in forms that aren't the easiest to assimilate in the body. And others usually come from like cod liver oil, which years ago I wouldn't have had any problems with. But now there's so much heavy metals in the ocean, and now we've got those microplastics as well. I'm a little leery about fish foods, depending on, and it probably varies depending on where you are in the world.
So how's she doing now? I mean, how's she doing now?
So in less than a week, her pain and nausea when eating was gone. About 2 weeks in, she had she woke up one morning and she felt so rested that she stopped drinking coffee.
Hmm.
And she had been drinking coffee for years
Right.
because her energy was so low.
Right.
So she didn't want to get out of bed,
Mm-hmm.
and she needed to boost herself up to start her day.
All right.
Now, so only 2 weeks in, that shifted, which is
Right.
huge.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, major energy level improvements. She's sleeping so well.
Mm-hmm.
She goes to bed easily. She wakes up easily.
Mm-hmm.
She feels rested,
Mm-hmm.
and her energy is so great that she just stopped the coffee,
All right.
and the nausea and all that pain went away.
All right.
Um, so within a month and a half, she told me that she feels the best she's felt in her entire life.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Cool.
So this is kind of my story
Mm-hmm.
that I'm putting out to people
Right.
is put together some foundational building blocks
Mm-hmm.
for your food and nutrition,
Mm-hmm.
and your body knows what to do with it.
Right.
And yeah, so it's really exciting to see. I mean, we have all these intellectual ideas and theory, but to see it happen in real life,
Mm-hmm.
for a young person who should be having, I mean, she should be rocking it right
Right.
at that age, right? This human body is designed to do all this amazing things, and so for her to be dragging,
Right.
through life since she was little
Mm.
is it's just wrong. And unfortunately, it wasn't until she got diagnosis of celiac,
Mm-hmm.
none of her doctors ever asked her what she was eating.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And to me, that's a travesty.
Right.
It's just that's so fundamental.
Yeah.
And so anyway,
Yeah.
so yeah,
All right.
it's and she just went gung ho too, which is that's the difference when you have enough severe health issues.
Yeah.
People's motivation levels are usually pretty strong.
Right.
So I gave her some information and she ran with it, so she gets most of the credit.
All right. Cool.
You
All
just
right.
need a little guy.
Yeah. Okay, so Michael, people might be thinking, they might want to get in touch with you, they might want to speak with you, ask you a few things. How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, well, my website is michaelmathieu.com,
Mm-hmm.
and my last name is spelled the French way, so I'll just spell the whole name out. It's
Sure.
Michael
Mm-hmm.
Mathieu.com.
Okay.
That's my website. I talk about the body work I do as well as the health coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got a YouTube channel, and it's Michael Mathieu Foundational Health.
Mm-hmm.
And I only have 2 interviews so far, but I have a ton of ideas and interviewees that I'm reaching out to now to get that going.
All
And
right.
then I only have a few posts on my Instagram feed, but it's right now I'm calling myself Carnivore Quad, and
Okay.
the quad is for quadriplegic,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm also interested in, I had a spinal cord injury 8 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm really interested in helping people with, spinal cord injuries
Mm-hmm.
boost their health in appropriate ways,
All right.
because um, you know, with the trauma that we had and all the hospitalization and chemicals we got exposed to,
Right.
with the severity of this kind of injury,
Mm-hmm.
that alone can really set some bad things in motion.
All right.
But then also, because we're stuck in a chair all day, bone loss is a huge issue.
Mm.
And that's something I had going on
Mm-hmm.
a year and a half ago, and
Right.
I've been able to turn around and make improvements. And then, yeah, so I'm excited about the possibility of working with people um, in my kind of situation as well
All right.
as able-bodied people,
Mm-hmm.
and helping them, live as long as possible. And because, with too much bone loss, you can, eventually things can just fall apart
Right.
totally.
True. True.
So,
All right, great. There's a lot of things that I'm sure people can pick up from speaking to you. Uh, you know, Michael, thank you very much for being on Author Story. I mean, this was such an interesting, informative session for me.
yeah, it's I so appreciate being here and getting invited to be on your program, and um, it's such a big. I'm hoping I got across enough, you know, the, the idea of, you know, we have the power. All of us have the power to change our health,
Hmm.
and I know I just gave little snippets,
Right,
but even if people are interested in just, can you point me in some other directions so I can study things?
right,
I'm
right.
happy to receive that kind of email as well.
All right,
Uh,
cool.
but there's so much great information out there.
I'm sure. I'm sure. All right, great. Okay, so everyone, check out Michael Mathieu and his website. And also feel free to comment and like this episode and subscribe to join us for all the future stories we'll be covering. So, Michael, thank you very much again for being on the show. It was really fun speaking with you.
Thanks, Alex. I had a great time.
All right, you're welcome. And for all of you guys, see you guys next time on Author Story, where we speak to another great guest about their very interesting story.